you guys have had the experience of being at either Stark & Company or Marsh, Budd, Siemens, Hagen, Ayol. I guess, so the first question is really, what was life like prior to 1993 and prior to the merger?
Well, I started in 1983 in February, towards the end of the month there, and of course that's T4 time, right? And typing T4s with a typewriter, wow.
We were kind of crowded. You think about the space we were in, and we were actually a bit of a leader in technology at the time.
I arrived in 1979, started in January of 1980. Just had left Touche Ross in Calgary, where we were on the 35th floor. So when I arrived on January the 2nd of 1980, I'm into a little bullpen. It's about 10 by 20, and there's 10 people in there. Shoulder to shoulder on benches. That's how my career started.
So all of a sudden, I mean, you guys are in two smaller firms, I guess, and then you come together kind of as one. How did things change for you? What were things like for each of you and your jobs?
There was definitely more people and different personalities to get used to as well.
We saw the opportunity to merge with those guys, and it provided a larger number of people to fall back on and for expertise. Either Ron or myself got sick during tax season, what would you do? Well, now if someone got sick and I had 6 or 7 other partners, having extra people around, it was an excellent opportunity for us.
We went over and met with the folks at the Marsh, Siemens, Budd and Hagen office, and we're kind of pitching this idea that, it was part of a growth initiative, and we got a lot of pushback from a couple people in that office, worried about whether they were going to retain their jobs. I tried to reassure them, and those same 2 individuals I had conversations with for almost 3 years after, and I finally had to say, if you lose your job now, it has nothing to do with the merger.
So you start out in your office, and the Marsh side, 7 or 8 people, and the Stark side, probably 15, maybe 20 people, somewhere in there. And then all of a sudden, by the time each of you retired, and you're talking about 80 or 85 people, that's a lot of change.
Sean, when I first started, we had paper files. So you'd have like 8 or 10 boxes, 30, 40 pounds a box, you haul them to your vehicle. It's just totally a different world today versus, like that 40 years ago.
Back then, CRA had color-coded paper.
Right.
So everything was on dot matrix with the little tractor feed. And we had carbon paper in between. And I had 4 printers. And those printers were going steady all day long. Then as soon as you left for lunch or left for a coffee break, one of the printers would jam, and you'd come back, and the entire tax return would be printed on one line. So then you got to start your print batch all over again. And
Tax season's always a little bit of a chore. Maybe not so much now.
can you imagine doing that now with the number of clients?
I know.
Through the years that you worked there, did you see any change in the clients walking in the door from the time you started to the time that you ended?
I think in the early 80s, we certainly had businesses, corporations, but a lot of the farmers were sole practitioners. More and more people are incorporating, so it's more expertise from us. So that gives us more time or more value to the client. That's where the expertise of the partner group was a real bonus for us.
I don't know who worked in the office when Glenn Rittinger had bought Einstein, and it got passed around to different offices. And finally the message came that Einstein was now at off-site.
We had taken Einstein and put him in the men's bathroom and snapped a few pictures, and I can't find those pictures, but they looked hilarious from the...
What about memories of the buildings, stories that came out of that?
I remember when we got a new filing system in the First Ave building, and we had to take all those files out and transfer them onto a different folder. But it was quite a job.
Our location on First Avenue we'd outgrown. We had some folks working over in the plaza, I believe, and did undertake to get everybody in one building. That was the opportunity, and I think initially when we went into it, we thought, like most renovations, that, we'd move a few walls and throw some paint around and we'd be in good shape. Turned into a bigger project once we got into it. The brick exterior, the way it was designed to fit some of the traditional buildings in downtown and the community. The front area that's landscaped, I think, is a nice aesthetic, and that used to be a parking area, back when it was a medical clinic. There were 2 rows of parking and all you would see is, half tons and cars parked out there. So we struggled with what we would do to create some elevation in there, and so I think Ben was able to identify this field stone that was available that really grounds the building and anchors kind of our connection to the rural setting, the ag community. I often ask people what they think that stone might weigh, and you get interesting guesses. So just so people know, it's 28,000 pounds. It's 14 ton. I think it's a great feature of the building that we reside in now.
So that segues into proudest moments of your career and I guess of being Stark and Marsh.
I'm very proud that I was able to work with the firm, and I was actually with the firm for 40 years.
I thought I'd probably stay here for maybe 2 years and be on my way somewhere else, and now it's been 37 years, so I missed that two-year cutoff.
Well, I think for me, Eldon, certainly the firm celebrating 100 years, I think, is exceptional, because not many businesses or organizations enjoy that kind of success. And I think Stark & Marsh has been a wonderful corporate citizen in the Southwest. I look at the clients that we've served. I see that many of them have been very successful, and I think we've had a small hand in that. I hope it continues for another 100 years.
You think about it, you had lots of choices in life. What drew you? What made you stay?
I worked with some very great people, excellent people, so there was never really an occasion where I thought, well, I'm going to go look for something different.
Over the years, like a lot of my clients I've become friends, they're golf buddies. Towards the end of my working life, people passed away because they're older, and then that's hard. You lose a family member.
Peters and Lepke merger took place in 2008, so that's 13 years ago now.
Wow.
Take us back to that time.
Well, basically pre-merger, Vern and I, we didn't have much of a supporting cast, so we kind of were doing everything. Other than bookkeeping, I guess we had assistance with our reception being Vern's spouse, actually. It was our receptionist. She was doing bookkeeping work.
How did the merger take place? Give us the background story on how that came to be.
Initially, I don't know if Todd and I or either one of us were totally sold on joining up with a larger firm again, but it became clear, I think for both of us, working 3,000 hours a year, and I was talking to one of the fellas that I used to work with at Burroughs Weber. He just asked me, he said, you want your life back, don't you? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. So I don't think Todd or I had taken a winter vacation ever.
How did that migration go, and how did your roles change with the merger?
It was quite an interesting process, actually. Probably the biggest thing was learning the names of everybody. You go from 4 people to, I don't know what it was at the time, probably 70 people in the total organization. So just even figuring out who was challenging. You look back on it and you kind of laugh a little bit.
The other thing that was tough, I think, was being back in a larger firm again, where I think Todd and I could make decisions pretty quickly. We kind of did our own thing. In a larger firm, what does the firm need from me? And it took me a little while to figure that out. I think I finally figured it out, maybe.
Maybe.
So, Todd, you've been practicing for 28 years. Vern, you've been practicing for 24 years. It's a combined experience of 52 years, so I imagine you've witnessed some changes in your career. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you that we use maybe today that you can't believe we didn't use before?
The work that it took to do a financial statement, you worked through a 14-column worksheet, and then you got your ending trial balance numbers, and those numbers went to a typist to type it up. Well, now you got software that takes these numbers and does all this work when you do journal entries or you post things into it, and there's not too many guys like me that are bird that could go back and do that anymore.
The computer probably changed things a lot. I think there's concerns about, artificial intelligence in the future, but my experience with the computer change was it didn't reduce the number of people that we had in the business. It just meant we could do more.
So, as you reflect on your careers, do you guys have any proud memories?
One of the things that I'm most proud of would be the ability to mentor and be a part of training the future leaders of the firm. It's probably one of the greatest pleasures I get out of my work.
What do you think that the future holds for the industry?
I think income tax is always going to be, it's something that's driven our business as far as you need financial statements and tax returns. It's unlikely to disappear, and I think there's going to be a need for it, and it's going to continue to drive our business.
I see an office maybe not so much, the large office like we have with all the bricks and mortar. It might be that you have a large staff that's throughout the whole entire world.
Any evolutionary movements or moments with client relationships?
Farming isn't a way of life anymore the way it once was. That's definitely a huge change that I've noticed over that time. Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've been concerned about it probably for the last 20 years, I think, the consolidation of farms, that they get bigger and we have less clients. But I guess there's more work to do for them as well.
So Eldon, you were brought on board with Stark and Marsh 12 years ago. When you reflect back as to what you were brought on board to do, what does that look like then, and what does it look like now in regards to your position?
If you think of the history of Stark and Marsh, 93 was when they came together as 2 firms. And, at that time it was 2 small firms coming together, and they operated that way and kept getting bigger and bigger through that era of time until they got into the late 2000s, and I think there was a thought process for varying reasons that it was time to maybe try something different strategically. As a result, they came together and they brought on a CEO for the first time, which wasn't me, which was Carl Nagers. And his job at that time was really to bring in the strategic framework for the firm that was going to not only help them for that time frame, but also well into the future. And so his role in 2008 was to put that together. Mine, when I joined the firm in 2009, was to operationalize it.
So you would have been heavily involved in a community support initiative surrounding Go Green Friday at the time. Do you want to speak to kind of how that kicked off and what that looked like at the time?
That was a spin-off to what our strategy. We have our 3 C's, so our clients, our colleagues, and our community, and I think we talk about the various elements with that. With community, the one thing that we said is we have to make contributions. We have to do something beyond just, saying that we're involved in the community. The concept of helping environmentally in some ways was important. Ours took on a spin that, environmentally we can help out the city of Swift Current through some of their projects. And the fact that actually, 2009 was the first year that we did it, and we're still doing, that initiative today is pretty rewarding.
So we'll jump to you, Darce, a little bit here. So you were brought on board with the firm back in 2011. And what were you initially brought on to do?
So I was initially brought on as the administration manager and to continue operationalizing the strategic plan. Shortly after I got there, we really started to see some real growth. We had seen the transition in what our people were. We started to have people retiring, and all of a sudden, boy, we needed to fill up some capacity. Marketing became a big piece of what we were trying to do, so we really took the thin layer of operations that I had done when I started, and we then put strategy to those operations.
So Leslie, in 2006, Stark & Marsh welcomed you as their first female partner. Take us back to that moment and kind of what that meant for you.
I guess for me, I didn't really think of it as a gender-based thing. I wasn't really concerned about that. I am incredibly proud that I was offered that position and that I just happened to be the first female person that was. But yeah, I think that we're on the cutting edge for a lot of reasons, and that would be one of them as well.
But it's because she was the best candidate, and that's the way it always should be.
So Leslie, your career as a CPA began back in 1996. How have things changed, I guess, kind of just as a whole?
Moving back to Swift Current, it became about a larger number of smaller clients. And I find that work to be very rewarding, to be involved and to know so many people and know about their businesses.
Is there anything you could do in 1996 that you can't do now?
When I went through the HR manual when I first came on board, there was one of the rules was no smoking in your office unless, of course, your client wanted to. Then by all means, you both could have a cigarette in your office.
Yeah, that would definitely be one that you can't do anymore. Yeah.
What is some of the most proudest moments that you have as you reflect on your career?
This is more of a personal thing, but I was the first partner who wasn't a CPA. For them to take that leap and say, hey, we're going to entrust you with our operations and trust you as a partner, I really appreciate that from a standpoint of that trust that they put in me.
Obviously in my role, I recruit, I hire everybody that comes to the firm now. And so over the last 10 plus years, I've been able to see a lot of people's careers grow.
Really proud, just of our building that we're in. Like, it isn't necessarily new anymore, but I remember when we moved from our building on First, this one on Central Avenue, I think we were gone for retreat maybe, but we left for retreat and had it all in place. When we came back, we were working in the other building. So over like 3 days, we had this whole business transferred from one building to another, and for the most part without any huge issues.
So what do we think the next 100 years is going to look like for Stark & Marsh?
As much as technology is going to change things in the next 100 years in terms of what people can do themselves, the things that a human and a professional service provider needs to do to be able to support them are going to remain. From a strategy perspective, are they putting things together and planning things properly so that they can be most successful?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is going to be the people that are working for us. And I think what's exciting about that is that just creates lots of opportunities for people in the Southwest.
Any funny stories? Anything you can kind of think of that has happened around the office that gave you a good chuckle?
When we have busy season, we try to, there's a lot of pressure. Over the last few years, we've hosted various game shows. Eldon and I were hosting and ended up having to put costumes on to be these game show hosts. What lots of people don't remember is that somebody hid my clothes and I had to be somewhere.
Oh.
Oh, look at him, look. Yes, you hid my clothes in the bathroom. Found my clothes. I got my daughter to where she needed to be on time. But that was the impetus for Flat Eldon, who I do remember piggybacking up a flight of stairs one evening as well. If you think of the leadership group over the last 100 years of the different partners that have been involved with Stark and Marsh, they've been leaders of our community. It hasn't just been what they've done at work. They've done things in Swift Current, in the Southwest, in Shaunavon. So they always took the lead, and so they always were moving the community forward the same way that they were moving their business forward.
Firm was a caring firm. They cared about your employees, your personal balance with your family and with the firm. That makes it a better place to work. And of course, the money.
I think, you know, the bedrock of what we do is relationships with our clients and relationship with our colleagues. And I think as long as we pay attention to those relationships and try to nurture them, it won't matter what it is that we're doing. If we can add value for clients, we're going to be relevant, and we will be here for another 100 years. And hopefully, you know, somebody will look back and, you know, can see that there was a lot of change in the first 100 years.
Thank you.